Hi friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to share my January wrap up with you. I started the month with Hunting Prince Dracula. This book took me forever to get through, and it's just because I don't enjoy this series. I read it because of the YA BookTube Awards, and then that ended up falling through. I don't enjoy this series. It takes forever for stuff to happen. I don't necessarily love the main character. It drags out. It has nothing to do with Dracula. And that's what I have found. The first book, Stalking Jack the Ripper, nothing to do with Jack the Ripper. This one, nothing to do with Dracula. It's just kind of like a retelling of sorts. And yeah, I feel like these titles are clickbait titles, and I really don't like it. The writing is very either too descriptive or not descriptive enough. It's really drawn out. Nothing happens. There's no way you're going to piece together who, what, when, where, why, because it's so off the freaking wall. But I did like the last chapter, or maybe it was even the epilogue of this, and I know the next one is something about Houdini, so I'm assuming again that it's not going to have anything to do with the real Houdini or anything like that. I will not most likely be continuing on in the series. I'm kind of sad because I do like what happened at the end of this with the two main characters, but this series is just definitely not for me, and I rated this 2 stars, I believe. I feel like her writing is getting better with every single book. I rated the first one 2 stars, and I rated this one like 2.5 stars or something like that. So it is getting better, but if these books are so long. This one is over 400 pages, and I think if she took 100 pages out, it would have been so much more like moving and interesting and kept me reading, you know. But there's just so much that just doesn't need to be in these. I had all these grand plans for 2018. I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to read this, and I'm going to do that. And then it actually came around where I finally finished this, and I was like, I'm kind of in the mood to finish that trilogy finally, because I've had books 2 and 3 sitting on my shelf forever, and that is The Remnant Chronicles. So I read this like 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whenever it came out. Let's see, 2014. So I probably read it in 2015. So like 2 years ago I read this, and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. If you don't know what this book is about, it's a fantasy series about warring kingdoms. The princess is betrothed to a prince from another kingdom, kind of as an alliance of sorts to bring these kingdoms to work together. And on her wedding day, the princess runs away to this town with her servant, handmaiden, something like that, and kind of wants to like create her own life, wants to make her own choices, have her own decisions and stuff like that. She doesn't want to marry someone that she doesn't love. So she runs away to this neighboring town, and she's kind of finding her way there. But in the meantime, the prince shows up, and an assassin sent to kill her shows up. And it doesn't really lead on who is the prince and who is the assassin, until like the very end, and then you kind of know. But I read it, like I said, 2 years ago, and I loved it. So I wanted to finish up the trilogy with books 2 and books 3. But it had been so long since I read this one, 2 years, that I was like, I'm just going to start with book number 1 and see if I loved it as much as I did the first time. And yes, the answer is yes. This is probably one of my favorite fantasy series ever. So I rated it again 5 stars. I went on to the second book, The Heart of Betrayal, and I rated it 5 stars. And then I finished with the behemoth that is The Beauty of Darkness and rated it 5 stars. So every single book in this trilogy got 5 stars from me. It is so good. Since it is a trilogy, you get to know the characters and the side characters, and it's very political. You get to know the different kingdoms and like kind of their different like their culture, their rituals and things like that, and the motives behind the main characters in the book. And this sets a really good groundwork about Leah and why she left, and you know, stuff like that. This picks up right where the first book left off, and this one picks up right where the second book left off. So I love how it's like no time passed. You feel like you're just reading this epic story, and they're all very beautiful. So if for some reason you're waiting, like if you read the first book and you haven't read the second and the third, I think they're even stronger, even better. And I just highly recommend this series. I probably will do a book talk on these books at some point because I just enjoyed them so much. But yeah, 5 stars. And that took up the majority of my reading month because, as you can see, that's like quite a hefty bit. The next story that I read is In Her Skin by Kim Savage, and again, the author reached out to me, asked if I would be interested in getting an ARC copy, and I said of course, because I have been supporting her since her debut. I really enjoyed her first and second novel. This is her ARC, so just keep in mind that this is an uncorrected proof of her third book, so the final copy, and my thoughts may change if I read the final copy. Okay, so when I read the synopsis of this book and I put it on my 10 most anticipated releases of 2018, it reminded me a lot of Here Lies Daniel Tate. And even after reading it, it still reminds me a lot of Here Lies Daniel Tate. Unfortunately, Here Lies Daniel Tate is so much better. I did do a full video on 5 reasons why you need to read that book. And walks in Her Skin. This is about a 15-year-old girl named Jo, and she takes on the biggest con of her life. She basically infiltrates a family saying that she is this long-lost daughter. The interesting twist on this one is that she's living the streets, and she goes to this library and she sees this girl and she's like, oh, I want to be her. She tries to, you know, she mimics people and stuff like that. She tries to become different people. Her mom has taught her how to do this. So there's kind of like a setting stage. Then she decides that she's going to be this one person, and that person's parents are dead. And so this family that she infiltrates is basically like her guardians, that when her parents died, like they would take ownership of her, and it's this girl that she like saw in the library that she's always like been obsessed with. Anyway, and they're, of course, they're really rich and stuff like that. So she goes to live with this family, and they take her in as if like, oh my gosh, you're back, I can't believe it. And then you're kind of realizing, well, obviously it's not her, like what happened to the girl, and you're kind of trying to decide what happened to her. Do these people really believe that she's that person? The thing about Here Lies Daniel Tate is there's like this whole family. In this one, there's only the one girl and her parents, and then the con artist. So it's not as in depth. The con is not as in depth as it was in Here Lies Daniel Tate, and it's not really as scary. It's not really Temple, the girl that she ends up like being sisters with or whatever. It's just, I don't know, it's just, there's something off. It doesn't feel as polished. Let me see what I wrote on Goodreads. I ended up rating this one, I believe, 3 stars. I did rate this 3 stars, and I said, it's not that I didn't enjoy the story, because I did, but it's still in the polishing phase, and in its current state, it's not as good as it could be. Yes, it's similar to Here Lies Daniel Tate, but it's very different too. You'd really have to read both to understand. I want to rate it higher, but I needed it to stretch that extra level. I feel like Here Lies Daniel Tate reached that extra level. This one kind of plateaus. There is this like crazy thing that happens in here, and I was horrified. I was like, oh my God. But this one, it kind of feels like you find out, and then you're kind of like, holy crap. And then it just kind of plateaus. So I think this one is really short. It was only 298 pages. So I feel like if another 50 to 100 pages was added, then it would be really good, because you could add more layers to the story and stuff like that. But as it sits right now, 3 stars. The last book that I picked up and read in January was The Woman in the Window by A.J. Finn. Again, I don't read a lot of male authors, so that was really cool. And the main character in this is actually female, and I thought that A.J. Finn did a really good job of writing a female lead. This does remind me a lot lot of the girl on the train because the main character abuses alcohol and drugs, and a lot of the story does detail her accounts of that. Basically, there's this woman that's an agoraphobic. She's stuck in her house. We're not really sure why she's agoraphobic. The story leads us down that path as to why. But she sees something happen in the house across the park, and that's kind of like the whole mystery. But that mystery really doesn't happen until like well into 100 pages, 150 pages into the book. So it kind of starts with just like her day-to-day accounts, what she does. And because she's agoraphobic, she stays in the house, and her life is just pretty much the same thing day after day. She loves old black and white movies, like classic black and white movies. She loves like Hitchcock and stuff like that. And she makes a lot of these references, but she doesn't work, she doesn't go anywhere. She's dependent upon her entertainment being these movies and watching her neighbors. So she goes onto this like agoraphobic website. She checks in there every once in a while. She plays chess, she takes French, she has these doctors that either call or stop by. But yeah, so this book is very repetitious in that way, that she's kind of doing the same things, and you're hearing about her house and things like that. So it is a very repetitious story, but once the mystery aspect begins, it was just like a page turner for me. I was so interested in how this could happen, what the twist would be, and stuff like that. And there's a few twists that I saw coming, and there are a few twists that I did not. So I really did enjoy this book, and I ended up rating it 5 stars. I was thinking about doing a full review. If you hear someone say that they thought it was boring, it's because of the repetition, I believe, and it just takes a while to get into the actual mystery. But I thought the whole thing, this is his debut, I thought the whole thing was super interesting and super engaging and well written, and even though it is repetitious, it was repetitious. It was like a necessary repetitious, or necessary repetition. And yeah, I really, really liked it. Yeah, I really liked it. So it breaks it up in days, and the chapters are usually fairly short. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I was really happy with my first book of the month pick. Yeah, so those are the books that I read in January. Like I said, I'm really, really, really enjoyed the Remnant Chronicles, and I really enjoyed The Woman in the Window. I definitely think that it is worth the hype, but just realize that you're going to get a little repetition because the main character is agoraphobic, living in her house, and she's kind of in a routine. But other than that, I had a great reading month. I'm so excited to start the reading year of 2018 this way, because I got a trilogy knocked off of my, need to be read list, and I got, some new, great books. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read in January, and that's all I have for you today. But I hope you're having a lovely day. I'll see you again in my next video. Bye!